In part 2, we went through 1-range and 2-range archers. The concepts we learned in that video apply to how to use early archers after a men-at-arms rush as well, so make sure to review that video for a refresher. Since your men-at-arms need to attack as soon as possible, a clean build order is necessary to get the most out of them. The standard is to make 3 militia and then have them at your opponent's base attacking villagers as soon as the men-at-arms upgrade comes in. A general rule to hit this timing is to have your barracks started while you research Loom at the end of Dark Age at the latest. Once you have 3 militia assembled, sending them all together to attack right away might catch your opponent off guard before their walls are up. This demonstrates the importance of getting your walls up before Feudal Age in many situations, as 3 men-at-arms and 1 scout cavalry can end the game against an unprepared opponent. As with our previous 2-range archers play, we don't want to make big walls with this, since we want to invest as many resources as possible early into our military. Walls just slow you down here, at least initially. Of course, if the opponent is also doing early infantry or even scouts, getting some resource walls can be good after the barracks is started at the earliest. I like to use these terms at the earliest or at the latest for a good reason, which I'll explain here. When thinking about your strategy, you should understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. The goal isn't just to make men-at-arms. It's to get men-at-arms attacking your opponent as soon as possible while not completely ruining your economy. Now, what do we need to consider to make this happen? Not ruining your economy in this situation means not idling your town center and keeping your villagers working as much as possible. You could theoretically get men-at-arms attacking your opponent extra fast by idling your town center to save food so you can research Feudal Age faster, but that is generally unadvisable, so we're going to assume we want to be constantly using the town center. Since we want to get up as soon as possible using this rule, making militia before starting the Feudal Age research would just slow us down. Therefore, the most optimal timing for the barracks to be completed is after Feudal Age has been started and you've collected an additional 60 food for your first militia. This timing just so happens to work out to be starting the barracks just before or during Loom research at the end of Feudal Age. This means that we need to balance going to Feudal Age fast by having lots on food with having 175 wood in the bank while you're researching Loom. Depending on the civilization you play, this can make your Dark Age setup a bit different. The build order I'll provide here will be for a civilization with no bonuses to making men-at-arms, which will be referred to as generic. This generic build order can be adapted to any civ if you understand the goals of the strategy as well as your civilization's bonuses. So, after getting the barracks timing down, we need to actually produce militia. The food is not an issue since we have lots of food income from sheep and berries, but you'll notice that we only have 50 gold in the bank, which is only enough for 2 militia. Luckily, villagers carry 10 gold per trip, and we only need 10 gold to make that 3rd militia. So there are a few ways to get this required gold. The most standard way would be to send 2 villagers to gold after you've started Feudal Age research, and then get them to collect gold and start building the mining camp after you have 100 wood. Since each builder after the first one only provides an additional 33% work rate increase, alternating which villager builds and which villager mines is the most optimal way to complete this process. Since villagers collect 10 gold in around 26 seconds and mining camps take 35 seconds to complete, if you just have 1 build and 1 mine, the miner will try to take the 10 gold back to the town center on the first trip. It's not that big of a deal if this happens, but if you can spare the attention, it's worth alternating the villagers after the miner has 10 gold. Another way to get the 10 gold is to use the barracks builder. If your gold is on the front of your base where you'll want to be building the barracks, then you can send your barracks builder a bit early to collect some gold while you wait for 175 wood, then build the barracks, and then have that villager take the 10 gold back to the town center. This method will give you a bit more food income since you take a woodcutter and send to gold instead of a shepherd, so it can be better if you need just a bit more food income instead of wood. Whichever way you do it, you need to make sure to have those 3 militia as soon as possible after the barracks completes. The next eco consideration is having 40 gold in the stockpile when Feudal Age completes. If you send 2 villagers to gold to build the mining camp with your next 100 wood after starting the barracks, then you'll have enough. Since you already have lots of food income, you don't really have to think about it too much. Once we get to the specifics of the build order, I'll talk about optionally adding some farms here for some extra food, but we'll look at that later. After your 3 militia are trained, send them to your opponent's base. You should know where this is, as you should have some scouting at this point. Targeting forward berries or a forward woodline is usually best. There are a few reasons that you want to send your 3 militia all together. First, you are less likely to be spotted by the enemy scout if you're all together. If you're spotted early, then your opponent will have lots of time to resource wall, which will limit the damage you can do significantly. Second, if you encounter any wolves, you can take them down faster, which means you'll lose less HP and can get moving to the enemy base earlier. Third, it's less to think about if you only have one group of militia instead of multiple. If your units are split up, it's harder to keep them under control. You shouldn't usually attack the enemy until all of your units are together anyways, so you might as well move out as a group from the start. A little bit of micro practice will go a long way here. What you should work on is called block micro. This is where you use one unit to block enemy movements while your other units do damage from behind. The scout works best as the blocker since it's so fast, but your men-at-arms can also work, though it's much more difficult as they're only slightly faster than villagers. Getting a friend in a custom lobby to practice block micro will really increase your effectiveness with this attack. Here are some examples of good block micro. As you can see, it's a very useful skill and can be used with pure scouts or even just the starting scout as well. Okay, back to the eco-management goals. On Feudal Age, we'll want men-at-arms upgrade instantly as our militia need to be at the opponent's base 40 seconds later, and this is how long it takes to research. The men-at-arms can do as much damage as they can while you work on your one-range archers follow-up. Good thing we learned one-range archers in part 2, so this part should be easy. Since we already have the mining camp, we just need to add an archery range, get to 4 on gold, and then 9 on food before getting the blacksmith and moving out with our archers. After the blacksmith completes, research fletching right away. Since we already have men-at-arms pressuring forwards, sending your archers as soon as possible can be good. This means just waiting for 2 or 3 and then going forward. As usual, against scouts, send a spearman forward with the archers. The reason archers synergize so well with men-at-arms is that men-at-arms hit early to force resource walls, and then the archers come in behind to shoot over them, making the resource walls useless. Even if your men-at-arms get walled out, the archer follow-up is sure to do damage. Your biggest weakness here is against enemy skirmishers. These produce faster than archers and can deal with both men-at-arms and archers. If you see skirmishers, you can still stick around a bit with your army sometimes, but you have to be careful when those skirmisher numbers get a bit scary. Luckily, skirmishers don't kill villagers very fast, so if you're up against skirmishers, even if you get pushed back, the counterattack can be stopped without too much trouble. There are many ways the game can go from here, but I think it's about time we get to the actual build order. If you have any questions about certain situations, leave a comment and I'll try to answer it. Just make sure to give enough context for me to give a proper answer. Okay, build order time. Dark Age just builds off of our foundation which we used for one-range archers. This time, we just make a little pit stop to make some men-at-arms along the way. Start with 6 on sheep, 4 on wood, then bring in the boar and go to berries at some point. We went through the details for this in part 1, so if you're not sure about your Dark Age, make sure to review that video. As this is an aggressive build, we'll go with only resource walls initially. Instead of investing much into defense, we're going on the offense. Since we need to be making militia with the next 60 food after starting our Feudal Age research, getting the barracks as soon as we have 175 wood will let us hit this timing. Again, this all comes back to wood spending order. In Dark Age, you get 2 houses, then the lumber camp, then 2 more houses, and then the mill, and then finally the barracks. After that, since we need gold, the next 100 wood should be spent on a mining camp. The longer you can continue this thought process, the more confident you'll become in your economy management. If you find yourself getting lost with what to do with your resources, usually spending your wood is what you need to do. For our build order here, we'll go up to Feudal Age on 21 villagers. With some practice, you can go up 1 villager early on 20 villagers, but the difficulty goes up significantly. better to stick with a slower uptime initially, and then once you feel comfortable with it, try to push the timing faster. Earlier uptimes mean you have less resources collected, so the earlier you go up, the more efficient you have to be. Each villager more than your opponent that you produce before going to the next age will permanently add approximately 50 wood to your stockpile compared to your opponent. So slower builds are not necessarily worse, they give you more resources at the expense of time. If you wanted to be greedy, you could skip Loom until the start of Feudal Age, and even if you reached Feudal Age at the same time as your opponent, you'd have around 50 more wood in the bank just for having one additional villager working throughout the Feudal Age transition. Anyways, there are always little ways to tweak the build to your liking, so even if you don't follow the build precisely, you can still have success depending on the situation. Alright, that was a bit of a tangent, but let's get back to the end of Dark Age. We've just started our barracks on the front of our base, and we need to send some villagers to gold. Initially, just sending one villager to long distance 10 gold while we wait for 100 wood is the standard. You don't want to rebalance your economy completely until you have the 500 food required for Feudal Age and 60 food to get your militia started, so just sending one villager initially will help you reach these food goals. As long as you have this 10 gold by the time you need to create your third militia, then it's on time. At the start of the feudal transition, you should have 21 villagers. You can have 9 or 7 on wood for 2 or 1 lumber camps, 2 on gold, 4 to 5 on berries, and the rest under your town center. If you want to go for a second lumber camp, make it after the mining camp. You really need these 2 villagers on gold as soon as you can, so you can get the 40 gold for men-at-arms upgrade on up. 1 lumber camp is definitely easier as there are less steps, but 2 lumber camps does give you a better economy. After your 3 militia are created, send them to your opponent's base. They should arrive around the time that they are upgraded to men-at-arms, which is 40 seconds after reaching Feudal Age. We already talked about micro earlier in the video, but basically try to kill villagers and try not to lose your units under the enemy town center. Good luck and have fun. Back at home, you've got some economy management things to worry about. As soon as you reach Feudal Age, get men-at-arms upgrade, the archery range, and then double bit axe. If you find that you don't have enough food for men-at-arms and double bit axe here, you can try a few things on your next playthrough. You can try to have 5 on berries instead of 4. Also, don't use berry villagers to build things. Builders taken from wood will mean you have more food income. Another higher level trick is to push deer with your scout to your town center. I don't recommend this for beginners, but if you're like 1300 elo or above, it's probably worth learning how to do. The final way I'll mention to get more food here is to add some farms during the feudal transition. Instead of making a second lumber camp, you can get 1 to 2 farms, which will hopefully help a lot. As long as you can still afford the archery range once you're up to Feudal Age, then it's fine. After the range has been started, you need to send up to 4 villagers to gold. Just send 2 villagers directly from under your town center. Since this is an aggressive build, we're going to skip Horsecollar for a little bit. We talked about blacksmith timing for fletching in the previous video, but basically get to 9 on food, then add the blacksmith. This means 5 farms if you have 4 on berries, and 4 farms if you have 5. Make sure that your archery range is constantly producing, and send your 2 or 3 archers forward as soon as you get the blacksmith. It's pretty easy to get house here as there's a lot going on, so try to be diligent with making them. This is especially true for the first few houses that you need, so it might be worth it to just make a house after your barracks is done, and then a few more with your archery range builder. After you've got your archers grouped with your men-at-arms and scouts, you can really start to threaten an opponent who is playing too passively. From here, it's just our basic feudal macro of adding farms every 60 wood, not getting housed, producing villagers and archers, and working towards Castle Age. You can choose to get Horsecollar at some point in Feudal Age, but this will hurt your Castle Age timing a bit in exchange for a stronger economy. The main reason you want a faster Castle Age timing here is to access the units and technologies available there before your opponent can. This is especially good for this strategy, Crossbowmen Timing. First, if you can get to Castle Age with a group of at least 10 archers together, then you can go for a timing attack with the Crossbowmen and Bodkin arrow techs. With both of these techs, you do 2 damage per hit to palisade walls, which will allow you to break them fast. It takes just 8 crossbowmen to one-shot villagers, so accounting for their 85% accuracy, 10 is a good number to reliably one-shot. Since crossbowmen pretty much dominate every Feudal Age unit, going for this timing can be a great way to get some early victories. Generally, you'll want to get to around 8 to 10 farms without horse collar, and then rally your town center to gold, make the market, sell wood and or stone, and buy food in order to start Castle Age research as soon as possible. If done proficiently, you can click up around 35 villagers. If the crossbowman timing isn't quite enough, and you want to get even more out of your crossbowmen, going for early ballistics is the next step. Make a university as soon as you reach Castle Age, and then research ballistics. This takes some time, so you can hit the crossbowman timing first to break walls, and then ballistics timing soon after to kill the enemy army and fleeing villagers. This can be great if you take damage in Feudal Age and need to make a comeback, or are ahead and want to end the game. Since you don't need much food income to make this work, skipping horse collar when playing towards crossbowman timing can be fine. Generally, after your crossbowman attack, you'll want to add town centers and create villagers for multiple TCs. This is called booming and is the main follow-up to your initial strategy on Castle Age. In the previous video, we learned how to go for a siege push. After we learn booming here, you'll know crossbowman timing, siege push, and 3TC boom as early Castle Age strategies that you can go for. The thing with booming is that unlike with attacking, you don't need to do it right away as well. You can do some aggression using your Castle Age tech or unit advantage, and then boom after, or just straight boom on Castle Age if you aren't set up to do aggression. To have a smooth time booming, we need to look back a bit at Feudal Age, and more specifically horse collar. Farms that you placed in Dark Age will be expiring in early Castle Age if you didn't get horse collar, so the more farms you get without horse collar, the less smooth your boom will go, as town centers and farms are both competing for your wood spending. For strategies that require good food income on Castle Age, like 2-stable night spam, horse collar in Feudal Age is a must. For booming, depending on if you got horse collar or not, your approach can be a bit different. If you did get horse collar and your farms won't need to be reseeded for a while, you can get town centers immediately upon reaching Castle Age. If your farms are going to run out soon, then making sure you have horse collar and adding farms before you add TCs can be better. To gain a deeper understanding of what makes a good boom, we need to look at some fundamental concepts. First, why do we even need to add additional town centers? Yeah, you can add them just to protect your villagers in some situations, but the main purpose is to create additional villagers to increase your income so you can afford more stuff later in the game. It's an investment where you spend some resources now for many resources later. Now, how do we create villagers? We need to have food and population space. Each town center requires around 6 farmers to keep running, though to not get housed, the wood requirement is a bit negligible. The focus here is on the food income. If you need 6 on farms per town center, then making 3 town centers when you only have 4 farms will end with less villager production than just staying on 1 town center and adding additional farms. Of course, if you only add farms and no additional town centers, then you'll be limited to 1 villager at a time. The goal is to add the correct number of farms based on the number of town centers you want to have. If you have a lot of floated food, then you can add town centers before getting to a sustainable farm count, but if you don't have much food income, and not much floated food, then you'll need to add farms first before adding TCs. For 3 town centers, you need 18 farms, or 16 with wheelbarrow. You can work towards this farm count progressively like this. Get to 9 farms, which will float a bit of food, then add a TC. While this TC is going up, get to 15 farms and then add the 3rd TC. Then get 3 more farms to reach sustainability. If you stagger your town centers like this, you'll reduce idle time and have a much nicer boom than just making TCs too early before you can support them. The great part about thinking about your boom like this is that you can start booming at any time. On Castle Age, after your knight's siege push, after your crossbowman timing, etc. Learning to boom is a necessary skill in 1v1s and team games alike, so make sure to practice it. Going for pure boom with no military production is fine to start, but once you reach 18 farms, you'll start to float resources as your town centers are now constantly producing villagers. Adding more farms will make you float food. It's up to you to decide what to do with the extra resource income that you have at this point, as this is where the game can go in many different directions. Resuming night production and adding more farms, sending villagers to stone, building up resources for Imperial Age, or adding additional production buildings. These are all things you can do after reaching sustainability for your town centers. One more tip is that if you're on around 30 farms or have around 70 villagers, it's about time to think about starting Imperial Age research. Continue to produce villagers until around 130, but don't neglect your Imperial Age timing. Before we end this one off, let's take a look at what we've learned so far. After all, reviewing is an essential part of the learning process. We actually have quite a few tools at this point. For Dark Age, we've kept up with pretty much the same foundation since part 1. 6 on sheep and then 4 on wood will give you flexibility for many openings, so it's a good foundation to work off of for beginners, as though it may not give you the fastest feudal age possible, it gives you one of the easiest. The first variation starts with just before we start going to feudal age. For men-at-arms, we need to make the barracks as soon as we have 175 wood after placing the mill. All other openings just use the same Dark Age that we learned in part 1, just with varying feudal uptimes. For feudal boom, scouts, and 1-range archers, 20 to 21 villagers is the goal. For men-at-arms, 21 is preferred. For 2-range archers, go up later on 22 to 23 villagers. The eco balances during the feudal transition are a bit different depending on the opening, so make sure to review the video with the strategy that you want to practice. With just these 5 openings, you already know most of the common early strategies. As we progress through this series, we'll learn a few more, such as Dark Age Rush with Militia and Tower Rush. For Castle Age strategies, we know Knights with the option for a Forward Siege Workshop and or 3TC Boom, Crossbowmen as a follow-up to the Archer play in Feudal Age, and straight booming with no or little military investment. Deciding which strategy to go for can depend on many factors such as the civilization matchup and the map generation. So, in the next part, we'll focus on situations where you'd want to select one strategy over another. Thanks for watching, and if you've made it this far, you won't want to miss the next one.